Greg Dostie here with another Dostie's View. You're probably wondering, what is this? Well, this is the entrance to the Bat Cave. This is a solar heater, and the rest is a mess, and this is a project. But what I wanted to talk about today was self-arrest grips, and why you would need one and which one you should get if you think you need one. This is my current regular self-arrest grip. It's a Gravel. What I like about it is it's got a nice, serious metal hook that will definitely hold on ice. It's got a nice handle in terms of self-arresting. It's got a nice handle for palming while you're skinning, while you're going uphill. But the strap is only good when you're holding it here, and even then barely. It should be up here, but that's where the knob is for loosening, so you can retract the blade. And so that's really its only flaw, but it's a major flaw. This is the strap is in totally the wrong position. It needs to be up here somehow, coming down, so that you could have it around your wrist above up here, and you could still be tied in when you're palming it, and you cannot in its current configuration. But I do like the hook, and I like the protection it affords your hand if you're in self-arrest mode. It has twist lock adjustment, which to me is the weakest form of adjustable ski pole. I like the flick lock style pole. As long as they're properly tightened, they don't loosen, but twist locks have a funny habit of loosening. So I'm not too enamored with this one. I don't use it very often because, let's get to the main point. Why do you need a self-arrest grip? Well, you need a self-arrest grip kind of in the same mountaineering situation that you need an ice axe in, but skiing with an ice axe, there's no really solid, reliable way to attach an ice axe to a ski pole to make it useful. It's not that it can't be done, but it's really a pain. It's nice to have something pre-done, okay? And so you would want a self-arrest grip if you're skiing really steep snow and or icy, and you know, the necessity for needing a self-arrest grip on icy terrain, there's a certain limit to how icy, right? I mean, you might need a self-arrest grip on a 30-degree slope. If you need a self-arrest grip on a 30-degree slope, I'm not saying there wouldn't be instances where you do, or it wouldn't be recommended, but I would at that point question the sanity of skiing such a slope. Now, as you get steeper, it can be very firm snow, kind of icy, but edgeable. You can hold an edge, but if you got off your skis, then you would be in trouble. You'd be sliding, especially if you're on most modern, wearing the modern ski clothing tends to be fairly slippery so that it can shed snow, but that makes it kind of an accelerator material. So you want a self-arrest grip so you can stop yourself if you fall in those situations. And of course, generally, if you're in those kind of situations, it's a kind of if you fall, you die sort of thing, the classic definition of extreme skiing. And the reality is you shouldn't be there if you think you're going to fall. But nonetheless, it's good, it's wise to be prepared in case you do. And because I've been in those situations, and so that's why I think it's good, if you're going to subject yourself to that kind of risk, to make sure you've got a self-arrest grip in your quiver of equipment. I find the last time I used the Gravel, the last 3 times, it was climbing Mount Shasta, and it wasn't that I felt I needed the self-arrest grip on descent, though it was nice to have in case I decided to do something wicked, or in case the snow didn't soften by the time I was descending. And so the main reason I use this on Shasta, for example, is I found the best way to reliably achieve the summit is to not camp overnight at 10,000 feet somewhere around the volcano, but it's to get up really early in the morning and go in the spring, and generally with spring conditions in before the sun rises and for several hours after that, it's very hard frozen corn snow. Edgeable, but you wouldn't want to slip. And there's definitely some sections in the climb where having a good handhold with an ice axe would be very convenient and reassuring. So that's the main reason why I've used this. Now, the first self-arrest grip I used ever was the Raymer self-arrest grip. And I really, see, this thing is beautiful. It's got the strap up on the top. It's got a nice flat surface for palming. There's protection for your knuckles if you're in self-arrest mode. It's no longer made, so that's a bummer, but that's just the way it goes. And the main reason it was abandoned is because it's a hard plastic. It's polycarbonate plastic, and it's actually quite useful. And in the realm of skiing, I think it's more than adequate. Now, if the snow is really icy, again, what are you doing skiing that? All right, you shouldn't be there. That's an ice climb. All right, so then you should have crampons and an ice axe, not a ski pole with a hook on it. But for edgeable, skiable snow that's steep, this plastic hook is sufficient. I've fallen many times skiing with these and been able to rest myself. And the one time I couldn't and didn't, I shouldn't have been there. Okay? Even this would not have helped, I don't think. It might have, but this definitely didn't. But I shouldn't have been there. It was not only very firm and hard, but there was a frozen glaze over the surface, which was not evident until I jumped in. And then it was very evident. And I survived, so not because of this, because I was lucky. All right. Now, I have been, when I skied the giant Steps Couloir, which was June 21, 98. So that's spring conditions in the Sierra. I was using a black diamond whippet. Now, all that's left of that particular pole is the hook, is the blade. And I love the blade. It's serrated here. It's got a little bit of a extra flare here to give you some. It'll hook on the snow. If it were just a simple blade like an ice axe, it might just slide through. But this acts kind of as a brake to help dig into the snow. And Giant Steps Couloir, for those of you who are not familiar, it's 3 couloirs, and the first 2, they end in a cliff. And it's 45 to 48 degrees, depending. I mean, the head wall might be 60, okay? It just depends upon how the wind and the snow has been shaped over time. But on this particular day, of course, the snow in that couloir had warmed and frozen and warmed and frozen, melted and frozen, melted and frozen. So, and I was pretty nervous because the first couloir ends in a cliff, but just before it ends in a cliff, it's got like this wave off to skier's right, which in this particular day was like a cornice almost. So you have to climb up over this cornice, and that gets you on top of the second couloir, which again goes down at an average pitch of 45 to 48 degrees, and it ends in a cliff. Now each of these pitches about 500 vertical feet, approximately. And then, so The second couloir comes down, but fortunately this one wasn't a cornice, but it was still the same thing. It kind of waved up, cliffed off underneath you, waved up to the right, and then connected to the final couloir. So there's 3 of them like this. The third one does not end in a cliff. It snakes down, and it's fairly narrow. It's actually steeper. It's sustained 48 until it bends and opens onto this broad, not really a bowl, just a shelf, tilted at probably 45 degrees. And that doesn't end in a cliff necessarily, depending upon where you go down. It could, but there is a final little couloir through the final rock that you can shoot through into the valley below. Anyway, it gets your heart pumping, and it's definitely a puckery descent because it's steep, and the first pitch ends in a cliff, and the second pitch ends in a cliff. So falls are not allowed. Certainly not recommended. And I fell on my first turn. So, I don't know if that was my head psyching out, or the fact that I had dull edges, or maybe that I only had a pair of Veloces for boots and Rainy Super Loops for bindings. I don't think the Super Loops were the problem. But maybe my edges were dull on my K2 pieced stinks. Perhaps all the above. Doesn't matter. I fell first turn, and it's pitching away at 48 degrees, and I know there's a cliff waiting, but I had my whippet, and so I kind of spun around, and as soon as I got so that my head wasn't down but it was up, I was able to dig this in and come to a stop. Okay. Of course, it wasn't until after I stopped that I noticed that I had forgot to put the strap around my hand. So I was very lucky on many counts. But it saved my butt. And I was able to stop, collect myself, and finish the descent without incident, without any more falling. And this whippet came in real handy going up and over that cornice. So if you're in that kind of situation, you do want a self-arrest grip. I really like the Raymer. Again, it won't hold on really icy stuff. I find this is a great grip. If you can find a pair, you can adapt it to fit to your current poles probably. And but when you're doing something steep, ideally, you should be ascending it first so that you know what the snow conditions are. And if this ceases to help you on the ascent, where you're checking out the terrain and the snow conditions, well, that's your warning. It's time to turn around, okay? So this is a great self-arrest grip for that, but they're not made anymore. And although this doesn't show the whole thing, I highly recommend the Black Diamond Whippet, okay? If you're gonna do that kind of terrain, this should be necessary, required equipment. And if you can't find the Whippet for some reason, or you get an opportunity to get hold of the Gravel, Gravel has a great grip, not so good strap, but you can make it work, okay? And I know that's not Telemark specific. Maybe our alpine friends would say, well, if you're telling, you're more likely to fall. So, and for some of us, that may be true. So for sure, recommended. Get out there, have some fun. Let's all drop a knee and spread Telemark.